Hey, thanks. Hey, good to see you guys all here. We, as we go along, we can talk maybe 30 seconds about us. Since I'm talking, I've been working at Zoom and DocuSign, doing most of the data transformations and analytics there. Started my career. I've been in the Valley for 30 plus years now. So started as a developer building Oracle CRM long back. So came from product development into IT, into data. What I'm going to do is like I just want to first start like we talk about ROIs or how do you look at value generation, right? I want to see if we can just first talk maybe if one word about what do you feel about ROI? Like first of all, is that something we talk about in AI? How do we talk about? Are you hopeful about it? Are you totally given up? You guys still exploring? Maybe start with a word and few lines. And Gurpreet, maybe you can start.
I think optimistic would be the word that I would say about AI ROI. Very optimistic about it.
I would say it's very real. I'm seeing it already impacting both bottom line and top line.
I would say seed. What I mean by that is we have to seed the right growth about AI across the big enterprise. So ROI is part of it, but you got to make sure that everybody is motivated and excited about AI.
That's very valid, and we'll probably talk. If nobody else, we would get into is it technology or is it people, and some of those conversations which we have to deal with. So before we like even think about what value is generating, I always feel I think we need to first anchor on how do we even measure, right? So it has to start with measurement. What are we measuring, right? And I'll get into details, but to me, it's important, and maybe we can go around, maybe Gopal on, what do you think about how do you measure a success or a failure? And in the AI world, is it changing? Is it the same? What's your thinking?
Right. Just a quick intro about myself. I have been similar to you. I've been around for a while. I have seen transformations. I drive transformations and from chaos and make outcomes happen. I've done that for delivery teams. I have done that for cloud transformations. I've done that for data transformations, and now with AI transformations. I'll give you an example or a story. A friend of mine, he works for one of the big tech companies. He came to me and he was bragging about, hey, they have a dashboard of how many tokens, AI tokens they have used across the company. And he was in the top 10, and the CEO called and said, hey, this is great. And at a buy, pat on the back, blah, blah, right? So my question to him was, okay, that's great. You're, becoming very proficient in AI. You're building your resume. But what does that mean for the organization? He didn't have much to say. So going back to your question, the measurement needs to be based on outcomes, not on activities. If you measure how many tokens you use or how much data you use, all those things are activity-based measures. It needs to be outcome-based measures to actually have an impact for the organization.
So, add to your outcome, I agree. I think inputs is one thing, output metrics is the other thing, and there are both tangible and intangible things which work in the organizational structure. The intangible ones are the success stories, like one or few things which really resonate. So a little of context, I work at Earnin. It's a small company, a startup. CEO is still the founder, and he's a technologist, so he's the founding engineer. It's much different situation when you have to prove ROI in that situation, where you can say, here are the things which we are not able to do a couple of years back, and now the things which used to take a week or a month is now happening in a couple of hours. There is no metric, but one tangible example which resonates way more than proving a metric. And then the second aspect of it is the tangible output or outcome metrics To me, that's like, bottom line is obviously everybody's under pressure. Is like, hey, are you able to do the same with fewer headcount? And then the second aspect of it is, are you enabling the rest of the organization? So measuring headcount is easier. Are you able to do more with the same headcount? Are you able to reduce headcount? Harder to show that have you moved the top line. Uh, that is something we're still figuring out, and I'll add more as we go through.
I think my fellow panelists make really, really solid arguments. I would marginally reframe the ROI discussion. And the example that I always take when it comes to ROI discussions is United States Postal Service. Does it lose $1 billion every year, or is it a service that we invest in because our citizens need that service for the mail to move around? I think when we introduce new technologies, we have to take a similar perspective, especially on AI. I work for a bank. I come from a regulated background. So when it comes to traditional AI predictive models, we've done them for many decades. There are regulations out there that help us understand those. And the example that I give is, when you have to do a regulatory model risk management review, is that a loss-making investment of time, or is that the cost of doing business? So when it comes to AI, before we start thinking about what ROI is there, I think the initial ROI is the green shoots. Is there a better, efficient process? People are able to do something faster. Are we headed in the right trajectory from a technology transformation perspective? The ROI discussion on day one is a misnomer. You're never going to see that ROI. The objective that we should be having that discussion is, are we directionally headed where we need to be in 6 months, 12 months? I mean, I wouldn't go beyond 12, because otherwise we'll be creating trouble for ourselves. But that's the way I think about it.
No, that's very valid. So I think yesterday at Summit, there was this question, Snowflake opening note, day before, and the short answers from somebody was, yes, you do need to tie something which is your revenue or your cost to whatever you're doing. It's not that AI is directly going to change it by itself, but it is easier to have a measurement which is somehow tied to your cost. And we'll try to get into some actual examples, try to cover that too, on what those look like. But those are valid points, and if AI by itself will not give you ROI. At this time, even Claude is not making money on the $20 plan they are selling to individuals, right? So that's not the way to look at it. But we have, if we can figure out a way to somehow tie that effort to a bigger company initiative, which is there for growth, for retention, for cost reduction, you are at least heading in the right direction, is what I will say. So let's get into some actual examples on what we might have tried, and it might be successful or not successful. You want to start with that? I don't know, maybe I'll just, or whoever wants to start.
Sure. So a little bit of context, like where we are. Before this AI revolution, we already started on building a clean data layer. We are on Databricks platform, so it's much easier in a lakehouse structure where all the data is in one place. And we are anyway building the context layer in terms of clean tables. So as soon as this wave come up, much easier for us to do the initial pilots, whether it's Databricks Genie, and then recently more on using Cursor and Claude to do the analysis. And so what really happened in terms of like the early success stories is new hire orientation, and you talk about like, hey, here is a slide deck of 5 or 6 slides which you should know about the company, versus we gave them like, hey, here is a Genie, and they can go and ask all the questions you have around the company when you come in a new hire. And that was like really clean example of like, hey, what is my demographic of customers look like? How is the distribution by X, Y, and Z things? And these things is usually you'll not have an analyst or a team looking at, but everybody wants to have curiosity around those questions. That was the first success story of like, okay, if nobody is a curator of data, I can go and ask any question, and would I get reasonable answers? It's not as sophisticated as, have you automated the experimentation? Have you automated a machine learning model? It was very simple descriptive analytics, but that generated the momentum on like, okay, this technology would work. And then there are subsequent things of more sophisticated analysis. So for example, you look at building a machine learning model typically it would require figuring out the feature, treatment, and then building a model, checking all of that. And I, haven't written any SQL in 5 years before I came to this company, and then I was able to build those things in IC capacity in like a couple of days. And I sent it to CEO that, hey, this is what is possible. Those are the two things which resonated that, hey, the technology works. You have a mandate to like scale it out.
Absolutely. I think that's a phenomenal example. Where we've been focused from an AI perspective is the unstructured data side of the world. What we built is, if you think about from a bank interaction perspective, there's websites, there's calls, there's emails, there's chatbots, there's branches. There is many, many channels that a customer can come talk to us. So what we did is we took all of that data across these channels and took those chats, took the chatbot interactions, and built a client pulse model on it. What it does is it takes that, synthesizes it across channels, and builds a score on what the customer's current frustration and need is. When you next time you call, there is a real-time feed on, hey, this customer has called us 3 times, this is what is going on, this was the resolution before then, this is what they're most likely calling for. And as that call inputs go through, it real-time reevaluates and rejiggers it to figure out what that is. And I think that one specific example I highlight because the unlock of unstructured data, I mean, you guys have all gone through mortgage applications. Think about the stack of papers that you send in. On the other side, somebody is churning through that and trying to figure out whether to underwrite this loan and how to best underwrite this loan. Those kind of significant needle-moving initiatives is where we are focused on AI and unlocking the value that it is bringing. And that specific example always stands out to me.
So you talked about personal productivity. You talked about unstructured data, which is about 80% of the data, and bringing that into the insight. So I will talk about agentic AI example. So one of the things that I have done is to see if we can augment data stewardship using agents, AI agents. So these are like, we have data ownership for agents, for data by domain. And they have to look at the data and make sure that the data is right. It's aligned to the compliance requirements, the changing regulatory landscape and all that. So we have created agents that will do part of the work and provide the input to the stewards who can actually review, and it reduces their work, and also it also helps them focus on the right things, the higher order things. So that's one example I can give you where, somebody doing like, say, GDPR compliance or any financial compliance. You do the first pass through agentic AI stewardship and then provide the input and the summary to the actual human data stewards who do the final work, final review and approval.
No, these are great examples. I'll add a few things. I would say I was a little fortunate at Zoom because we had a CEO who's still the founding CEO. He has been beating me up from day one on what is AI telling you. So every question I have is like, okay, so what is AI telling you? And in the beginning, I was like, what do you mean by that? Like, I can chat, but this is a deep analysis we are doing about a churn modeling in a company. I can't just get it from AI, and this was like 2 years back. So it pushed us to think through, okay, what problems are we solving and how do we get to? So I'll give you maybe 2 examples that we deployed, and it's a little bit of a journey. So one was on the sales side. As I said, it's always good to tie your efforts to, I would say, sales often because they show revenue, and if any change I can do on the revenue, you are on a good seat for a long time. So we were originally using ML models to figure out targeted accounts, right? Who do you do a cross-sell, upsell? So ML has been propensity scores. A lot of you guys will be probably doing it on like, what is the propensity to buy and all that, right? So those were the traditional thing. We extended that initially to just tell every salesperson, give them 10 accounts to work on. every 2 weeks. So it will be a chat message going out. So that's where we were before. And as we brought in Gen AI, the challenge we saw with the business was like it takes them a while. Even if I give them an account, they need to do research. They need to understand who to talk, what should I talk about, and all that. And if you look at Zoom, we have a huge mid-market. So we have millions of customers. Of course, the big ones are not millions, but mid-market is huge. And sometimes salespeople may have like 300 accounts assigned to them. They don't even remember the names of them, forget what to do with them. So that's where the prospecting model we kind of automated. And it not only tells them who to talk, it tells them who to talk about what to sell, where they have a retention problem, where do we have risk, and what is going on with the company. And all that research, which a good salesperson will normally do, and it may take them days or weeks, it's at a fingertip, right? So they say, okay, I want to talk to this customer. So now they are preparing their meetings, they're spending times on what sales should really be doing. And what we did with that, we deployed it in a smaller area so that I can look at historical conversion rates, and then I can really see if this actually differs. And we were able to increase our conversion rates in double digits. And that suddenly brought all the leaders into, oh, if that region can do it, and this is the thing. And I didn't even talk about it. It was operations and salespeople who actually sold it for us. It's like, hey, this is the conversion we got. We have to deploy this very fast globally. So the ROI discussion kind of shifted from me to literally like sales ops and sales. Like they are the ones who are giving a number and they will keep monitoring it. I just have to make sure that my models are producing right results and we are not giving crappy information. So we kept focusing on that more and more, made it better and better. And that has grown a lot. Nobody has questioned any ROI on it because it's tied to sales and they are able to now retain better and they're able to sell better. Right? So that's external. We tried that internally, and I was smiling when you talked about tokens. And it's a lot of kids, and actually even my own son, he's like, Dad, he's an intern. And he's like, look at how many tokens I'm in millions of tokens I'm using this week. I'm like the second one in the company. I'm like, dude, slow down. What does that mean, right? So we did something similar. At that time, it was not token. And I'm talking about almost 2 years back when we were doing more with AI. And everybody was like, how do you measure? And what did we measure? We started measuring lines of code developed by individual developer. At that point, it makes sense. In fact, even head of engineering was trying to do the same thing. Okay, my velocity of lines of code generated by developers is increasing, so I'm using AI, I'm getting better at it. But hey, if you really get into details, first, AI can generate a lot of crappy code. So lines of code doesn't really mean that much. Secondly, sometimes you have releases, and there's a huge line committed. Sometimes you don't. So how do you really even measure on that one? So we finally switched it to really features delivery with some measurements around it. So how many features you actually take to production. And now I have a measure which I can talk to anybody, like, up and down, is because it's tied to the final outcome. Why are they building code? Because they're building new products and building features. On the data side, it can even be more analysis or more dashboards or report. You pick up whatever, or more agents that we are delivering. But that velocity, although the expectations are becoming now ridiculous a little bit on how many features you can deliver, because everything is now, I told you in the morning, why is it taking more than a day to get this done? So we have to manage some of that. But at least that for internal productivity was a better measure for us when we started getting into what the end customer sees, not what the builders have built. Right? Okay, so we'll run out of time soon, I guess. So I think at the end, the last thing we want to probably cover is we do a lot of pilots. Pilots are easy these days. I keep telling people, don't show me pilots. It's just so easy to build. But when you work on something, how do you decide, hey, should we continue? Should we invest more? Should we stop down? Maybe a quick thoughts. Gurpreet, you want to start?
I think, first of all, I think pilots is a phenomenal concept. It helps you deleverage the risk of a big bang. But there's 3 things that I'll tell you about scaling pilots. The first one is you have to be clear before you kick off the pilot on what's the success look like. You're not going to get a full-scale outcome. You're not trying to get a full-scale ROI, but you have to decide what those 2 or 3 or 4 green shoots that are, and you have to agree upfront both with your provider and your business partner so that it doesn't become a discussion later whether it was success or not. The second thing is pilots by definition and design, especially AI pilots, are being run in very curated environments that are bespoke, built for those pilots. Whether those will scale outside of that across domains, across your technology, across your real technology estate is a very important factor. And the third one, which is, I'll take an offshoot of token maxing, whether the units of cost will hold and still create a positive ROI when you go full scale. All three of those are very critical when you think about moving a pilot to production.
So this is nothing new. We have done portfolio management, and we have evaluated portfolios before. And we've been doing this before AI, and even when even before cloud. So the question is, hey, what is the portfolio we should invest in? There are industry frameworks that can be customized based on the enterprise we can use. So that's one point I want to make. The second piece is that the difference is, one is speed. The second one is there are byproducts for AI. So there is an OpenAI white paper that talks about Moderna. They created a custom GPT for a certain certain domain within Moderna using OpenAI, and that one did not yield results. But now they have more than 300 or so custom GPTs for other areas, which they leveraged the one that they used for. So it's not just what it's used for. Are you building a platform that can be leveraged across the enterprise using AI? So that's the other thing, the scale piece of it. And one more point I want to make is that the pilots themselves may not yield results, but there may be other motivational aspects, that intangibles that may come out of it, which may be a learning effect that can have osmotic effect across the enterprise as well. So those are the couple of additional points I want to make in addition to what you mentioned about the pilots.
I think the only thing I would add is, if you're doing a pilot, what part of the pilot stays even if the pilot fails? Because in my experience, I've changed 3 different pilots, and it's easy to kill if you're not committed to it. So building a data layer, now you switch from one kind of agent to a different, let's say Claude or something else. If the horizontal layer stays consistent, it's easy to switch. And what I've learned is, technology is changing so fast that over-committing to one vendor or committing one technology is harder. It was easier for us to just switch from one to the other after.
No, great points. I would add the speed to it. So the expectations are changing. So the speed at which, like earlier, you were right, at the structure should be what we have always done. Where do we invest and when to stop investing and all. But there are a lot of things which are forcing us to make those decisions much faster. Also, the cost that goes into it, it was not too far back when I was struggling for my team to use AI. They were not using AI. And now we are getting a stage where it's struggling at the cost it's generating, and is it really generating the value or not? So I would just say, when we are thinking about these pilots, we have to be a little more cautious about how are we going to measure and what are the gates that we put in, because it would be just in days and weeks where things will change and evolve. And technology is moving so fast that all of a sudden what you were thinking, the way you have designed it also may change. So it has to be, I don't know if we have, I wouldn't say we have a very good answer on exactly what to watch, because the space is moving so fast. So we have to also, I hold a patent on LLM. 3 years back, I submitted it, I got it recently, it's already obsolete. Okay, I'll just say that. So that is how because at that time it was a great idea and it actually made a big difference. But now there are different ways of doing things. So I think we do need to figure out how do we switch fast on these decisions. And if we can't do that with pilots and with the right designs, then we'll be in trouble. And the cost, like it took us a while to realize that cloud cost is high. Like some of us who has gone to cloud, and I remember in HP, the estimation cost for production is what I was hitting 2 months before I went to production. So I didn't have a load, but I had the same cost. Now it is not even in 6 months in a year, right? Your cost on your bills on these, and everybody's getting smarter. They are no longer giving you all you can eat plan, or nobody's giving all you can eat plans easily. So even on the enterprise plans and all, you have to be careful how the pricing structures are changing. And I'm seeing all tool vendors, they are also constantly changing the pricing structures. So you have to be careful on what are they using for pricing. So be careful on the cost side on AI. It can bite you much faster than what you're used to in the past.
You were talking about speed. Everybody knows about legacy code. We have to deal with that. And usually it's a generational thing. That's what I've dealt with. But these days, anything that is 6 months is a legacy code.
All right, so that was great discussion. I think we are out of time. Thanks a lot, Gopal, Abhinav, Gurpreet. It was great talking to you guys, and hopefully it was useful. I don't know if we have time for questions, or are we closing it?
Yeah, you have, let's see, you have about 4 or 5ve minutes for questions.
Okay, so if you have any...
If you have any questions, yes, right here. I'll bring over the mic.
Hi, I'm Victor. I want to go back to the token maxing discussion, but Gurpreet, this is actually for you, even though I can't see you. I like the analogy of the post office as sort of a cost of doing business. Do you have a framework or a way to think about how much of a budget you allocate to that sort of thing? Because conceptually, I agree. I want engineers playing around with AI. I want them using tokens. I want them to see and experiment with how much they can do and how efficient they can be before we start to peg an ROI to it. But how do we think about like how much spend is good spend?
I think that's a phenomenal question. There's 2 or 3 dimensions that I think about it. I don't have a silver bullet on it. I'll say that out loud. But there's 2 or 3 dimensions that I think about. The first one is experimentation is an absolute must, but experimentation tied to what you're trying to solve. Not open-ended experimentation saying, hey, we are trying to solve, the speed at which we can take a customer's failed transaction and investigate fraud. How fast can we go about it and figure out what the timelines are? That's one. The second thing is, I have been investing the experimentation time from my employees, not from my contract workers. And I'll be very brutal about that, right? Because I want to keep that knowledge within my organization. It also has a cost aspect to it. What I have done is I've created, think about it as an experimentation. They're the equivalent of Google, do whatever you want to do day, right? So every 4 hours of at the end of the week or somewhere in the week, we say, hey, this is the time that you can play with these problems, 5 problems that we're trying to solve. The third thing is your discretionary operate budget. You can take some of that and deploy towards it. The reality of the larger organizations is you're still being held accountable for your next quarterly results. We still have to deliver values. We still have to keep the wheels turning. But it's a chicken or the egg problem. So this is the motivation of resources, your motivation, and a little bit of creative accounting that gets you where you want to go.
One thing I noticed, more 30 seconds, you do want a budget per person, not hard rule, just a little friction when they cross, have somebody validate how they are using AI. I am seeing mostly the problems over here are they don't know how to use AI, and there are a lot of very good tricks, simple tricks, which you can generate, and you say, are you using the tokens right? And if it is, please go ahead and let that person do more. So don't discourage it, but check it.
All right, we have another question right here.
Hello, thank you so much for such an insightful discussion. So I have a question for you leaders that, like, as you already mentioned, that anything beyond 6 months is legacy nowadays, right? And we have to adapt the change much quicker than before, right? So now, as we are seeing this tooling sprawl, right? So like so many vendors, so many model changes and those kind of stuff, right? Every model is behaving very differently, or like the tools are basically very customized for a particular thing, and then like next week like something else is coming on, right? What are the strategy you guys are taking to stabilize the whole situation? Because we cannot keep changing every 6 months for the whole stack, right? What are the strategy you guys are taking? Like, are you sticking to a particular model vendor, particular this platform, particular and there is some changes you add up, right? So, what is the strategy to keep the balance between the adoption of changes, but also keep the stability?
I can start if you guys want to. You go ahead.
So depends on where. So like your analytical tool set or base warehousing and transformation, those you want to keep it more stable. AI tools, I would say, are more fungible at this time. And you need to like at Zoom, we have changed our coding tool 4 times in the last 1.5 years. We have switched tools. And nobody's complaining. In fact, they like it because when we switch it, it's something better. As long as your code is going in your code repository, you're owning whatever you're building out of it, it doesn't matter. So depending on the type of tool sets, some would be fixed, like enterprise apps you won't switch, but at this point, I would say start thinking about getting rid of those enterprise apps also because it's changing very fast. But that's a different type of discussion. Anything else you want to add?
I think there's a couple of things that I would add. Just to give context, I work for a bank, regulated environment. AI access is severely monitored and restricted based on the approved patterns. So a lot of our objective has been, if you think about it in 2 or 3 large chunks. The first is, if you think about storage of data, we have to do fundamental data work for the AI to work better. And I'm not talking from a coding perspective. I'm talking from a business value perspective. Somebody being able to ask complex questions on performance and do analyses. So that data work is absolutely going. We're doing that in open formats with an S3 storage and Iceberg and Parquet files. That way, it's there for good, irrespective of who's consuming it, because that's the trend. The second is compute. On compute, we have to be flexible. I mean, a lot of us are in town because we do work with Snowflake, and Snowflake is our consumption layer, and they have their own set of AI capabilities that they're bringing, which are optimized for them, which are helping us answer some of the questions. So that's the second thing I would tell you. The third thing that I would tell you is not thinking about the model, but thinking about the outcome. So instead of what we've been using Bedrock, for example, so that we have access to the best model, whichever we want. And the reality is, I don't always need the latest and the greatest model for answering every question. And that's where token and spend and some of the cost things come in. I could very well go 2 versions back and get as good a result for 1/10 of the cost. So those are the things that where we are focused. The models will evolve very quickly. So building the harness is really important. And the close thing tied to it is, we talk about agentic AI a lot. We've been focusing on figuring out the control plane. I was hoping in the first keynote here that they would talk about the control plane. They did not.
Sorry.
I'm sorry?
Sorry about that.
Oh, yeah, no, not your keynote. I was talking about the Snowflake keynote. You're good, you're good. You
ruined it, Tony. You blew it.
Inertia is good. Inertia is good. But that control plane and controlling who's doing what, where, with what permissions is going to be more critical than whether we are, using the right model or not. That's where we are focused.
I would add one aspect of it, which is you need to look at it from an AI governance perspective across the enterprise. There needs to be a strategic level, which is basically, hey, what do you want to be maybe 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road? So some kind of a board to look at these tools. The second thing is an operational level, where you need to have an inventory to figure out who is using what and all that. And then finally, at a tactical level, hey, how much cost and how much do we want to invest in these things? So that's how I would look at it, strategic, operational, tactical level from an AI governance perspective, because you're asking a multi-layer question there. It's not like, hey, a developer can decide which tool to use. You got to look at it at all 3 dimensions.
All right, that is it. One more time for our panel. Let's stay on stage and take a group photo.